Hi everyone, I'm Sajana. I'm the founder and CEO of the Energy Umbrella. I'm also a sophomore majoring in business honors and management information systems at UT Austin. So my startup is called the Energy Umbrella. The Energy Umbrella is a solar energy system that uses a foldable, ergonomic solar pod to deliver reliable and portable power to families when it's needed most. The Energy Umbrella was designed for urban families in India that face frequent power outages, and now we're exploring different use cases as well. So how the Energy Umbrella works is that there are these solar panels and this pod that's placed in an area of families' homes that receive solar energy. And from there, our 4 solar panels capture solar photovoltaic energy in all directions. And from there, it gets stored in a battery pack. At night, when there's an outage or when people don't have power, all users do is simply slot the solar panels back into this pod, and then they collapse them to be packed and space efficient for their urban homes. The Energy Umbrella can charge 5 phones, 3 laptops, 6 LED bulbs for 15 hours, and 2 table fans for 3 hours. For scaling, we're also working with a lot of different other companies for different use cases and pilot opportunities. So we're working with the military and the Army Applications Lab in Austin for a use case for the military. We're working with NGOs in disaster relief and emergency response. We're also working with unhoused populations in Austin and potentially expanding to other developing countries beyond India, and also for recreational purposes like camping, boating, etc. This is the Energy Umbrella, powering homes, powering lives. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sajana. I think, Josh, you're up next.
You can use that too.
All right, cool. Got a clicker. All right. Can everybody hear me? All right, cool. I am Josh Johnson from the Prairie A&M University. I come to you today to present Horizen, where innovation and energy meets. So, Horizen was first started with the focus of bringing innovation to the energy market to lower greenhouse gases. We are in a tough predicament because recently we had to pivot on one of our markets. So a lot has changed since we first made this slide, but that's part of being an entrepreneur, having a startup, having to restart, and But our goal is to bring innovation to energy to lower greenhouse gases. The way we want to do that is researching, developing, and producing innovative products that accomplishes that goal. The problem that we have today that we've pivoted to is congestion. Congestion is a very, very big problem within the energy field. It causes the generation companies to generate more power than needed. That also increases the greenhouse gas emissions that we're trying to fight. So our goal is, by lowering congestion, we will enhance, we will then and lower greenhouse gases. That's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack Phillips. I am the CEO and co-founder of MACH Transit. I'm also a recently graduated mechanical engineer here from UT Austin, and today I'm going to speak a little bit about our efforts to magnetize mobility. And so what that really looks like is the development of the fastest ground-based camera in the world as our pilot product using magnetic levitation. So essentially using what is primarily constrained to laboratories and public transportation across seas, maglev technology, and implementing that in new and creative ways to develop new transportation technology to bring this technology to market. So once again, for our pilot product of the maglev camera module, we are initially deploying this into the motorsports field, enabling a camera shot that travels at over 200 miles per hour to basically hold side by side with the vehicle and provide new unprecedented shots. So looking a little bit at that market, everybody knows, right, motorsports right now is a rapidly accelerating market with series like Drive to Survive and things like this that has popularized Formula One IndyCar and NASCAR have long been some of the largest broadcasts in the United States entertainment space. And so we are looking to capitalize on the growing market there. Looking forward a little bit about our technology and how this pivots in the future to energy transition, which is our end goal. We have the MACH Vision system. So in the top right corner, you can see the pilot product that we are developing. That is a levitating vehicle that is able to travel at ultra high speed with 0 points of contact. Like I said, for our initial debut product, we are retrofitting that with a camera module on top and using it to film in this somewhat niche industry. But really the goal of pursuing an industry such as motorsports is it's very public facing, gives us lots of exposure and lots of iterations to run the system, optimize it, and get it exposure to the public so that way we can one day transition it into the public transportation energy transition space. Looking a little bit at our milestones, I will not read all of these, do not worry, but we founded in December of 2022 officially from a student organization here at UT Austin, Texas Guadalupe, which is doing similar work in the transportation industry for Hyperloop. So in the last year or so, we have began talks with Circuit of the Americas here in Austin, as well as moved into a small workspace. We also made a great partnership with Harris Hills Raceway, which is a local racetrack in San Marcos. We have also been raising our pre-seed series, as well as doing surveys and things like that for building our debut prototype system out at Harris Hills. This speaks a little bit about our plans to commercialize. Like I said, the first being building that prototype track out at Harris Hills, which will give us the required information to iterate upon our design and make this a more feasible and scalable product for public transportation and the continuation of this. And then finally, the team that's doing that, as I mentioned, all came from Texas Guadalupe. We are 5 UT engineers who are very passionate about magnetic levitation technology and are looking for innovative ways to commercialize it.
Great, thanks, Jack, and thanks again to all three of you. Really cool stuff, really impressive to see the innovations coming here. So something that strikes me in watching your 3 presentations, most of the program, at least today, has been focused on research, technology coming out of the labs, and I feel like looking at your 3 presentations, it's kind of coming from the other angle where you sort of identified the problem first, and then you're developing the solution, the technology around it. Both have their place. I'm not gonna pick one or the other, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that sort of origin story of how you each kind of came to the problem that you're working on and how you sort of started developing this company. And Sajana, I'll start with you because somehow you've managed to get to this place only as a sophomore, which is crazy to me.
Sure. So last year I was in a social entrepreneurship fellowship at UT. And in the first fellowship that I was in as a freshman, you go through and you basically identify problems that you might be facing or other people might be facing. And so one thing I distinctly remember was how power outages impacted my family in India on a daily basis. So they couldn't work, they couldn't cook, they couldn't study. And then being really passionate about it, I started, creating the energy umbrella. I went through the incubator fellowship, built it out a lot more, and then started raising funds around campus, kind of scaling it. Now we're at the Capital Factory in a class there. It's taken a long term over the past 2 years, but that's kind of how it got started.
That's impressive. When I was a freshman, I was like struggling to figure out how to, buy my own laundry detergent. Great, Jack, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we all came out of the student organization Texas Guadalupe here at UT. They developed Hyperloop technology, and so myself as well as the other co-founders that were pictured were some of the leaders in that space. That was working on, as I said, Hyperloop technology, which is ultra high-speed transportation, primarily utilizing magnetic levitation. And we basically came to the conclusion that we were super passionate about this technology. It hasn't really been deployed anywhere except a few locations in Asia for public transportation and in the laboratory for some niche uses. But we really believe that there's a lot of potential in reducing contact friction for transportation, leads to higher energy efficiencies and just greener transportation overall. And so we wanted to look at commercializing the technology to bring it more into the public awareness, and then we originally founded the company with the goal of pursuing public transportation. That's a very daunting task in the United States, especially in Texas. And so we've had to pivot a few times, as Josh mentioned, to get to the point where we are now. But I really do feel confident that now with the public exposure, we'll be able to get with the market that we will be able to transition the technology down the road.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. Sometimes you gotta take little bites to get these big changes across. Josh, what about you? How'd you come to be working on this problem?
Just passion. I've always had passion for building businesses and really helping the world. And when it came to being an entrepreneur at school, you know, when you think about it, you think of all the glorified benefits of what it is, but what really struck to me was just who it helps and how there are many different ways to help people that you might never see. And that's something that struck me because I ended up going to something in Houston. It's TEXI. It's Texas Exchange for Energy and Climate for Entrepreneurship. And there I found out about the energy field. And when you can learn that you can help the world with your mindset and your different type of just who you are, just bring yourself to who you are in the world, and it lights a fire into me, and I can think of all I can do. So that's how I was able to come and create what I created today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that passion is oftentimes so important for entrepreneurs because it turns out it's hard. And if you don't have the passion, it's, maybe easier to just go get a normal job. Building on something you just said, Josh, you mentioned TEXI. Can you tell us more about TEXI? Because it's a really cool program and it's available here at UT, I believe, as well.
TEXI is so it's really a collaboration of multiple schools here in Texas where they're trying to build an ecosystem of student entrepreneurs backed by Greentown Labs, which is based in Houston. And they're also in partnership with MIT as well. And that's where I learned about really the entrepreneurship steps, really, to look at it differently. And I'm grateful I'm a fellowship there. I'm grateful that I went and experienced it.
Yeah, just to build on that, so TEXI brings, basically they said, what's the secret sauce in creating energy startups? And they identified this guy, Bill Ellett, who runs the Entrepreneurship Center at MIT, who's just been extremely prolific in launching companies out of that, not his own companies. And some folks in Houston said, let's do it. And so they got Bill Ellett, the guy who's like one of the most prolific coaches of starting businesses. And he comes and he runs a boot camp for the folks at TEXI, which I believe is just free for anyone who signs up, right?
Really, it is.
I think 5 universities are involved in it now: UT, A&M, Prairie View, Rice, and UH. So it's a great program. If you're interested in getting involved, I would definitely recommend checking that out. For Sajana and Jack, I'd love to hear sort of what some of the resources you guys have found available here on the UT campus in terms of helping you, supporting you along your journey. And Jack, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Texas Innovation Center has been integral to our development. I actually learned about it just by passing it in the hallway right on my way to class. And so we had been toying around with the idea for creating a startup for a while, but it really just took walking in there and meeting with Ashley Jennings. Huge shout out to her. She's been incredibly helpful for our development. And she connected us with grants, with other programs on campus, such as Genesis, which we're now a part of the portfolio for. They've also been very helpful. I think there's lots of different outlets on how to get involved on campus. I think UT is a really great place to do a student startup if you're planning on doing one. But yeah, I would definitely recommend both Genesis and the Texas Innovation Center.
Yeah, Sajana, anything on top of that you've found useful?
Yeah, I was also a Genesis portfolio company, and I think Jack's company as well was part of the UT Smart Energy Innovation Call, which gave us a good amount of funding as well. And then I was in CEL, which was a program that I was in my freshman year. And then after that, also like the Launchpad has given us funding as well. And so all of those resources, as well as Longhorn Startup Labs, which is the class at Capital Factory students can take. It's really been really helpful.
Oh, that's outstanding. Josh, have there been other resources at Prairie View that you've been able to tap into, or have you mostly just worked through TechSE?
So after TechSE, we also received a gift from Bill Aulette. He allowed us to bring discipline entrepreneurship to Prairie View A&M, which I don't know if y'all read the book, but it's a great book for if you really want like the steps on building a startup and really going through the mental processes of what you should do. And after bringing that to Prairie View A&M, it really brought a new fire. Because before it's like you're just going in the wind, not really knowing where you're going. And now you have this book where it's proven and it gives you really an outlay of where you're going and where you should go. It's allowed us to really go even faster and even harder towards the problem and what we're trying to solve. So I would like to say like that really has helped us out a lot.
Yeah, and I'll just repeat, like the guy who literally wrote the book on how to be an entrepreneur, Bill Aulette, is coming to Texas and giving boot camps to folks for free. And yeah, his book is great. Awesome. I'd love to hear, I'll just throw this out for the group if any of you have thoughts on this. I'd love to just hear how you juggle being a founder, being an entrepreneur, on top of being a full-time student. Because I never started a business till after I graduated, and that was super hard, so I can't even imagine doing it on top of being a student.
Yeah, I think I'll start, but it's obviously very difficult, and I think it's kind of hard to just keep momentum in like all aspects of your life. There are times where like you have a big exam tomorrow, so then that means you can't work on your startup, or it's like you don't really feel like working on your startup anymore because you're so busy with so many other things. So it's a little bit of a balance of juggling your like motivation to do work in general with being a student, and also like there's just so many other, student org commitments. You want to hang out with your friends, you want to enjoy college, and like balancing who you are as a founder with who you are as a student is challenging, but at the same time also very rewarding. And there's so many resources on campus and in Austin that we're so connected to, and I'm grateful that I've got the chance to explore them as well.
Yeah, I remember when I was a student, the sleep, study, socialize were the 3 S's, and you could pick 2 out of the 3.
Right.
I don't know if that's still something that's talked about. I can't imagine now adding a 4th S. I imagine you still kind of have to pick 2 out of the 4.
Right.
Yeah. I'll speak a little. So as I said, I'm recently graduated, but through my entire senior year, I was doing both full-time, being a full-time student as well as a startup. The thing that I found that helped, but obviously did not alleviate all the issues, was really scheduling it in, pretending it was a class, right? Scheduling it for Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, or whatever it may be, right, with your entire group. We're a startup of 5 individuals as well, all that were full-time students, and so it really did get tough when we were coming down to scheduling, and so that was the only way that we could all get together and work on the issue, is carving out time out of our schedule. The other note that I'll add is, because I'm on the other side of it now and I'm no longer a student, I recently started full-time work about 2 weeks ago, and so this is my 3rd trip to Austin since starting my full-time job. So there's definitely still a balance there as well. Same principles apply. Right when I get off work, right, I go home and I work for an hour or 2 that's been scheduled ahead of time on the startup, and then I give myself the rest of the evening. So definitely is a delicate balance that you got to figure out, how to do.
Yeah, Josh, anything to add on that?
Yes, when it comes to when things don't go your way, I think that's really the hardest things to deal with as a full-time student. Because as I said earlier, we had to pivot recently in our business plan, and you think you know where you're going until you hit a wall, and it's kind of like disappointing because you spend so much time, a lot of time, talking to people, meeting people, coming up with ideas that you feel good will help. You feel that will help the world, just for it to be like, okay, it's not gonna work. Now we have to go back to step one, restart, and it's kind of fun. I mean, that's part of it. It's the fun, having to restart. You know where not to go now, but having to deal with that, and then having to have homework due that night where you possibly didn't get a good grade. So now, not only are you dealing with your idea not working, but now you're also dealing with homework that is just as hard. And it's just, I think it's really, the hardest part is really like the mental of it, keeping yourself sane, keeping yourself mentally healthy so you can keep pushing, because if you're not able to give your 100% to the business, you're not going to have a business. Because if you burn out, there is no business. And that's really where the difficulty comes in.
Awesome. So I'm going to pick on you a little bit more here, Josh. When we were preparing for this session, Josh threw out a potential question, and now I'm going to make you answer it because I thought it was such a great question. Was there ever a time where you second-guessed the decision to be an entrepreneur? And it sounds like you've gone through this struggle. So have you been second-guessing that? How did you work through that? How have you sort of dealt with that?
Have I ever second-guessed it? I would like to say no. 'Cause I know who I am, and I know what I want to be, so I'm going to do everything I can to get there. Now, I might not get there as fast as I can or as efficiently as I can, but I do know I will get there eventually. So it's never a fact of if, it's a matter of when. So when it comes to starting a business or having a startup, it's never. It's just about how I can make it happen. Because I know it's going to happen at some point. And saying, "Oh, I don't think this is this is what I want to do," and I made my mind up, and I'm going to get it. I'm going to accomplish
love it. Love the passion.
Yeah.
Jack or Sajana?
Yeah, to continue off that, I think the toughest thing for me through the startup process has been that the workload is entirely dependent on your motivation. At the end of the day, you still have class, no matter whether or not you want to do it. You still have your full-time job, whatever it may be, whatever your other obligations are. But the deadlines that you set for yourself when you're an entrepreneur for achieving your prototype or your goals or whatever it may be is entirely dependent on yourself. And so it's very easy. I found times where the team is like, well, why don't we just push that back a month or two? Because there was no urgent deadline that we needed to hit. And then we had to catch ourselves several times and say, no, let's take the extra time this week. Let's put in the time, even though we're busy and have social lives and things like that. So I would say that's the toughest part of it, is really it's all driven by self-motivation. Almost nothing is driven from externals until you're later in the process where you actually have these partnerships or things like that. But in the beginning, it really is all self-motivation.
Yeah. Sajana, anything to add on that?
Yeah, 100% resonate with what they're saying. It's really difficult at times when it's a Friday night and you want to hang out with your friends, but then, there's a pitch or something coming up or something very important you have to do for your startup. And again, there's no hard deadlines. And at times it gets easy to get caught up with maybe a full-time job might sound better, different things, different obligations that people have. And again, what Josh said, I think I've always been really interested in startups. So it's not really maybe I wasn't feeling this idea right now. And then, thought about something else. But for now, I've really enjoyed working on this. Yeah.
Awesome. It looks like we have a couple questions coming in from the audience, so feel free to send those in with the Slido app. So just a quick question for you, Jack. Someone was curious about your camera solution, asked about how many frames per second that is and how that compares with existing technology.
Yeah, so the whole goal there is to build a modular system where, depending on broadcasting needs or what track you're on, whatever it may be, that you can swap out whatever camera's on board. For our prototype system that we're putting out at Harris Hills, that's a PTZ camera, pan, tilt, zoom, so it has internal motors that allows it to pan and tilt and zoom. So that's 120 frames per second, 4K, as well as a 30x optical zoom, because there's times where the track we have is really big and we have a good point of view so we can see the whole thing, so sometimes we need to get in really tight. And then the last thing that I'll say is in the future, we plan to integrate multiple cameras on board. So one ultra-high frame rate, so that way we can catch photo finishes, right, where they're both crossing neck and neck. Other ones that have long optical zooms, like I said, as well as wide angles, so you can catch the entire pack moving, things like that.
Awesome. And a question for Josh. Someone asked about a little bit more about your product to reduce transmission congestion. And I know you're early in a pivot, so maybe that's still in the...
So I can tell you what we were planning on doing before we came to the pivot. So we had something that was phase change material that would go into the lines that would change from being a solid to a liquid instantly, and it would take away energy from the lines itself to reduce energy dissipation, which will increase energy which will increase the transmission of energy. That's what we were planning on doing, but due to prior research and recent conversations, that isn't something that will be as viable in the market because there are certain things that take away the need for that as much as we want. So it wouldn't be a smart idea to create a business around that product. But that was one of the innovations that we were going to create and bring to the market as well.
Great. And there was a question for Sajana. What are the next steps for Energy Umbrella, and how does that compare with your original timeline?
Yeah, right now our team's going through also some pivots on exploring different use cases. So the main things that we're working on right now, we're building our working prototypes out in the lab. So that's kind of our next steps. And then after that, start piloting in Austin and patenting. And then after that, kind of moving towards mass manufacturing and production, and then start launching. That's the proposed timeline for now. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of different things we'll go through along the way.
Yep. Gotcha. I'm curious for the three of you. Obviously, we're at an energy conference. You're all working on energy. I'm just curious to get a pulse on, like, how prolific are sort of the machine of energy startups on campus versus are there still people starting software companies? Are there still people starting, whatever, Uber for dog walking? How have you sort of seen the trends on campus for the various types of startups?
Yeah, I would say hard tech is less prevalent than it has been in the past. I mean, in the recent years, there's obviously been an explosion in software startups, especially with AI, ML, everything like that. There are certain grants and funds, a lot of grants and funds that only go to AI and ML software companies. And so I would say hard tech energy solutions, there's not a ton that I'm personally aware of, and that a lot of them are approaching it more from, if they are in the energy space, from the software, optimization, algorithmic, things like that. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think especially in recent years, there's a lot more AI startups on campus. It's a lot. I think people are really challenged with doing hardware stuff just because I think a lot of people think it's limited to engineering majors. And so it's a lot easier for people to stick with software, different things that they can also scale a lot easier as well.
Yeah, and from our experience, hardware obviously is at times a lot more expensive because not only do you need to physically build out your prototypes, but a lot of the times the hardware needs to run on software. So there's kind of multiple expenses that you see on hardware side of things, whereas software is a lot of it's just the work hours that you put in initially and things like that. So it's really a large upfront cost, as I'm sure everybody here is aware of.
Yeah, Josh, what about
I guess for me, it'll just be really, I guess I'm the head of the innovation type business at my school. Because people do create businesses, they do find a problem, they find a solution, but it's never something that's never been done before. It's always a Me Too type of business. So when I come to students at my school and say, hey, you ever thought about doing something bigger, something that nobody else has done, they don't really have it's that they're afraid to do it. It's kind of, because it's a very hard thing to do. You gotta have the will to do something different, go against the grain and say, no, like, this is what you do, I'm gonna do it another way and show you that it works. And that's very hard to find in people, especially in students in a school where it's not happening that often. So I would like to think that with me being the head, it's gonna happen a lot more often.
Very cool. I have another question I'm curious about, this sort of notion of a technical versus a non-technical founder. I know, Jack, you come out of the engineering world, Sajana and Josh, you're business-y majors, I don't know your exact major, but something in the business world. At be curious, and Jack, maybe I'll pick on you first since you're in the minority up here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on sort of founding from that technical side versus the non-technical?
Yeah, we definitely do not have a lack of engineers on our team. We have 4 mechanical engineers and 1 electrical engineer. And so we each have different specializations in our fields, but at the end of the day, it's a lot easier, we've found, for mechanical engineers to slightly pivot and pick up a different subsection of mechanical engineering than it is for me to learn how to be, a CEO, right? The business side of it has been a massive learning curve. Thankfully, I think I'm finally starting to get all the jargon down and actually understand all the business terms. But if you have a team with multiple different disciplines, I think that's obviously ideal. You want some business, some engineering, things like that. If you're starting a business by yourself, I imagine it would be difficult to approach it as a non-technical major in a technical problem. I might be wrong. I know there's resources, and you can obviously find others. But I'd say it's almost as difficult to go the other way as well because, okay, now I have this functional products, but I haven't marketed it at all. I haven't talked to anybody about it. You face the opposite problem, but it's still a big problem. So, definitely a diverse team is ideal.
Yeah, Josh, I know you're chasing a very technical problem as a non-technical co-founder. How are you finding your technology? How are you approaching that side of things?
I'm thankful for my co-founder.
Okay, you have a technical co-founder.
Yes.
Okay.
Because there are times in meetings because we do meetings 2 at a time, like we're both there, because there are times where they'll say some stuff and I'll look at him and say, hey, what did they just say? Because that's not what I do. I can talk money, I can talk, marketing, I can talk different markets, but when it comes to the product, like the product I just said with the phase change material, there's been times where I've said that and people just automatically thought I was an engineering major. I go, no, that's not what I am. This is just, I've said it so many times, I can get it down to the point where I know what I'm talking about, but it's, when it comes to the technicality of certain things, luckily I love to learn, but if it wasn't for that love of learning new things, then it would be very difficult without my co-founder and just that will.
Yep, so Hannah, what about you? You showed us some pictures of some pretty cool looking prototypes earlier. How are you guys building those? You have a technical team working with you?
Yeah, I started the Energy Umbrella as a non-technical founder by myself in a technical space, so that was very hard. And I remember, I'm a business major. I don't know anything about electrical engineering at all. I remember calling my dad, being like, "Can you explain AC to DC conversion to me?" Very basic stuff. And then, kind of learning a lot on my own for that first year, and then eventually taking on a technical, CTO and then COOs that, know the space a lot better has been really helpful. Now we have a team that's much more qualified than I am to be building working prototypes, but the first year was very hard as a non-technical major.
Gotcha. Another quick question from the audience here. I don't want to spend too much time on people's technology, but someone asked you, Jack, why you're moving the whole camera and not just the lens with an electromagnetic field. Wouldn't that be more controllable and cheaper?
Yeah, that's interesting. I might be misunderstanding the question, but the lens is obviously what puts everything in focus and gets you to the zoom and things that you want, but at the end of the day, you do still need the sensor behind it, which is what a camera really is, to actually interpret what it's seeing and convert that to an image. So what's actually interesting is we found, since we're going to be trackside in our first initialization for the product, when you see broadcasting, I'll keep this brief, when you see broadcasting cameras, they generally are massive, right? They have these $200,000 focal lenses that can go 200 or 300x optical zooms, things like that. And so moving that entire thing would be incredibly difficult, and that is not what we were doing. So we're focusing on smaller cameras, generally with smaller lenses and less zoom, because we're so much closer to the action. And so at the end of the day, if we were trying to move that whole thing, which is what you might be imagining for a broadcast camera, it wouldn't be feasible. But we're really trying to focus on cutting edge, smaller camera technology to try to alleviate that issue.
Interesting. And Sajana, another question for you. Someone said, great product idea. What hurdles are keeping you from achieving your next company milestone?
Right now, I mean, it's just engineering. Like, we need a lot of hands on deck to be building our working prototypes. So that's kind of our main thing. And we're just trying to build a product that's really reliable right now and then find what market we need to go to and what customers. I think we have a lot of interest, but I think we need something that works really well before we get there. So that's our main next step.
Time and money.
Right.
That's the standard too, yeah. I'd extend the question to you guys, maybe Josh, you first. What are sort of your biggest hurdles moving forward right now?
The biggest hurdles I would say for us is really understanding the end user, because at a certain point, when you're trying to make a product for somebody, you want it to be specifically for that person. If I were to try to create a sweater for all of y'all and try to sell it, not everybody would buy it. So that'd be a waste of resources and a waste of time and money. Except if I were to try to make a sweater for one of you, then I know you'll buy it because it's specifically for you. So it might have specific things that you might not even know you needed. So like if you like to have candy on you, if you're the type of person that, oh, I like to have Skittles, we make a little patch for you right here to put your Skittles. It's like, oh, thank you. But that might not work for everybody else. So that's the biggest time of really just trying to understand your customer and understanding their knickknacks and the different things that you can add into your product so it can create that need for them to buy.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's the voice of the customer, understanding your customer. So important in business in general, but obviously startups. Jack, I'll throw it to you probably for the last word here on.
Yeah,
on some of
absolutely.
your
I know
biggest
we're running
hurdles.
out of time, but quickly, I would say balancing engineering versus the business side. I've found that we've really moved in waves. Initially, we had this really cool idea, modular maglev. You can use it for so many things, and so we spent all of our time and effort just developing the product. Well, then we started getting closer towards having the initial prototype, and we really had nowhere to market it and no set, clear market to put it in. And that's when the public transportation to this new camera system really came. It was almost the same technology. We were just using it for something else. Then we put a lot of time and effort into the business side of things, into starting to market it and meet customers. And we met one of our strategic board advisors, James Hinchcliffe, who was a former race car driver. Now he works in broadcast, and so he made connections to NBC and Fox Sports. And they're like, this is so cool. Can you show us a finished product? Like, we'd love it. And so then we're like, well, we're not there yet. So now, we're just going back and forth.
Yeah.
And so
That's great traction now.
Yeah, mirroring those so that way they kind of converge at one point is the goal, but it's very difficult to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congrats on that. Well, I'm glad we're wrapping up now because Josh just talked about a Skittles pocket in his sweater, and that's just like blown my mind. Like, why doesn't this exist in more clothing? I need a Skittles pocket. But thank you. Please join me in thanking our panelists. This has been really great.